John McAuliffe, Chief Marketing Officer of VFM Leonardo, and welcome to the VTV channel. VTV is a weekly series of interviews with industry experts on the latest topics in travel e-business and specifically online merchandising practices that help hoteliers extract more value out of their online presence. As always, we encourage you to email us at vtv@vfmleonardo.com to suggest topics that you would like us to cover in future episodes. Today, I am joined by Rick Leutwyler, the Chief Operating Officer for Pegasus Solutions, as well as the President of Pegasus's representation services, including UTEL Hotels and Resorts and UTEL Connect. He is responsible for managing all product, sales, customer care, and marketing for Pegasus, as well as strategic planning and continuous process improvement. Prior to joining Pegasus, Rick held a number of senior executive and leadership positions at recognized global hotel and travel companies. Rick, thank you for joining us on VTV today, and welcome.
Thank you. It's a great pleasure to be here, John.
Our topic today is an interesting one. We're going to talk about look-to-book ratios, and in particular, the impact that the changing online shopping behavior has had on look-to-book ratios. And I recently read a research report from Pegasus that stated that hotel transaction volumes increased nearly 50% in 2009. Meanwhile, many hotels saw fewer guests than they did in 2008, and they also saw fewer guests that were willing to pay for what they would have paid in 2008. In your opinion, Rick, what is the main reason for this?
Well, I think there's a couple of different things going on here. The first is that the way that people are choosing to shop these days is actually causing this look-to-book ratio to go up significantly. So they're doing a whole lot more of looking than they are booking than they used to in the past. So that is definitely a factor. And then I think another big piece of this is, well, of course, we saw the economic downturn last year. That had an impact on everybody's results. And people, because they were being more cost-conscious, were doing more shopping, but they weren't necessarily doing more traveling. And so we've really seen that come together as a bit of a double hit for the industry.
Are there a number of things or a single thing that you think is changing the way that people are shopping that's resulting in this look-to-book ratio? Is it just an economic situation that will correct itself, or do you see this happening in this year and in years to come?
I definitely see it happening, in fact, growing exponentially in years to come. I think the short-term effect is this economic change that we went through has also made a change in the consumer psyche, and that is, it's now cool to be cheap. In the past, what you really wanted to be able to brag about was how much you could spend on something, where you stayed at something. It was almost kind of that image of how much can I brag about in terms of my opulence. And I think now we've seen in many different ways that the real focus is on how can I show how smart I am in my ability to find great deals. And I may still want to brag about where I was, but I'm going to do it with a lot of focus on how great a deal I got. And so that psyche change, I think, is going to stick with us for a while and is going to drive behavior. But the other thing is that the ways in which these people are now able to do the search for travel is actually making a bigger change. There are so many websites that they can go to, so many mobile devices and applications they can use, that they are actually using many of them instead of one, as they may have in the past, because they have more choices. And the way those particular tools or applications shop is a bigger burden on a lot of the systems that are behind it. And in fact, some of our discussions lead us to believe that we should expect this to really have multiple level growth in the coming years.
Yeah, it's interesting when there's a couple of things there that you were talking about. When you had mentioned it's cool to be cheap, I just want to clarify that point or better understand it. It sounds like it's not about buying things that are less expensive because they're cheaper, but still getting or buying things that are of good quality, but getting the best price that they can possibly get on it. Is that correct?
Yeah, John, yes, but I would also say it's a little bit of both, because remember all of the convention type work and group work that was canceled because there was so much pressure for governments and large corporations to not be going to these big 4- and 5-star events and on locations. And one of the things that they didn't realize, the public didn't realize, is they, for instance, might have been coming to where I live in Scottsdale in July and paying a really great rate, even though they were staying at a 5-star resort. So the stigma of being at a 5-star resort was negative. And so people started to move away from that a little bit. But then, yes, very much what you said. The other piece is, hey, but isn't it great if I can get the 3-star price at a 5-star property or the 1-star price at a 3-star property? So I see actually both happening.
Right. So is there an opportunity in those 3-star properties to present themselves in such a way that perhaps they highlight the services or attributes that a 5-star has to take advantage of this new type of shopper? Absolutely.
And the industry has already seen a lot of that happening. And actually, I've seen this happen in different economic shifts that have taken place. It's a real chance for those 3-stars to, just as you said, reach up and show that they offer a very unique value and that they can meet many of the needs that perhaps people didn't expect because they just didn't give them a try. Of course, the opposite is true too. It's a chance for the 4- and 5-star to reach down and grab some of the business from the 3-stars because they're moving their race down in that. So it gets to be a very competitive marketplace. Not that it isn't always, but it adds a different dynamic to it.
Right. And then you were talking as well about the fact that consumers or travel shoppers in particular have a real abundant supply of sources or websites that they can go to do their researching and comparing online, more so today than several years ago. What is the opportunity for a hotelier that is trying to reach up in the marketplace to be able to take that transient shopper or that shopper that's doing the exhaustive research and convince them to consider their hotel?
Well, one of the big things that industry leaders need to understand, whether they're in a distribution side of it or whether they're in the hotel side, is that the content that they provide is absolutely key. And we may need to shift our thinking about what we mean by content, because it's not just the very rich images and the multimedia images that are now available and the well-written content about the property, but it's how you portray that and how you share that. And the way that you create an experience for the people looking to your property or to your chain is going to make a big difference in how people decide where to stay. And I have seen over and over again properties of, let's say, very similar feature, functionality, and even value have extremely different performance because one really has just grasped hold of what the power is of having great visual images, wonderful virtual tours, really strong, relevant content, and then presenting that in a way that just really engages the person who's trying to make that buying decision. So to me, that is the number one area for people to focus on.
Right. I've certainly heard over and over again, both inside the hotel industry and outside of it, that content is the new advertising. And I think you bring up an important point. It's not just about the content, but it's in how that content is shared with the consumer that is as important.
It is, and I think that it's interesting because, again, a dichotomy. On the one hand, hoteliers need to understand there's so much that they can do and that their competitors may be doing in the way that information is distributed, that they really have to keep their game up on the level that has been set by others. The other piece they need to understand is that there's a lot of it that's going to be out of their control. If they feel like some of it is out of their control today, wait 2 years from now. Because as we get more websites that are pulling in those kind of content pieces from other sources, as we get the mobile applications that make a whole different user experience for somebody making a travel purchasing decision, that app or that distribution group is going to have control over the way that content is presented. So it's very important for them to have that great content available to be used in whatever way that particular distribution point presents it. And then the other side is they have to also be very innovative about how they present it themselves and how they make themselves accessible through all these multiple and very growing and dynamic distribution channels.
Right. Certainly, a lot of reasons for us to believe that the looking part of the look-to-book ratio will continue to increase. For our hotel viewers out there, what should they expect to be a common look-to-book ratio for transactions through the Pegasus switch?
Well, I would tell you that in the short term, what we've seen as an average is somewhere between 2,500 and 3,000 to 1. And I would say in the short term that's going to stay pretty much the same, but I would tell you that's very much a managed level. And by that I mean the organizations that can help make an impact on that are working very hard to stay at or below that threshold, if for no other reason because there's financial and system performance reasons to do so. But I would also share with you that in some of our conversations with people in this line of business, the frame of reference given to me was, don't think about 2,000 or 3,000 to 1 going to 4,000 or 5,000 to 1. Think about it going to 1,000,000 to 1. And it's not that that will really happen, that we'll get to 1,000,000 to 1 in the way that we do it today, because what we have realized in working with these folks is that we need to come at this a completely different way. And in fact, they may actually look at 1,000,000 different search points compared to the 3,000 they look at today before they make a single booking in the future. But the way they look at it is going to present a very different burden on the systems that currently care so much about a 3,000 to 1 look-to-book ratio.
Certainly, it seems like that the infrastructure behind the delivery of a hotel's rates and availability needs to be solid. And it also is apparent to me that this is the growing trend is really not only the increased amount of looks in the shopping cycle, but where they're accessing those looks from continues to grow as well. In other words, that whole long tail of travel websites.
It's very true. And what's been interesting to me is to see such a proliferation of sites and mobile applications, and most recently some of the discussion about some of the groups getting involved in different ways, whether it's Google or Apple or others, who can often be extremely game-changing in the way they impact an industry or a channel that they go after. And so I think we are absolutely going to continue to see that evolve, to grow, and I actually think we can expect it to see those kinds of changes happen at a much more rapid pace in the future.
Right. Rick, thank you very much for sharing your insights and knowledge with us today. We very much appreciate having you on VTV and look forward to having you on another episode.
Well, thanks, John. It's been a pleasure.
To all the viewers out there, be sure to post your comments on this episode of VTV and subscribe to our feed to receive more valuable insights from industry experts.